This past week was the last week in the marketing year for old crop grains, and it ended with some good news for exports. Neil Melancon brings us up to date on that, plus the ups and downs of the market so far in this week's Bottom Line.
The Bottom Line is brought to you by the Cotton Board, strengthening the fiber of our industry, and by First South Farm Credit, financing rural America since 1933.
Even though exports normally are tapering off by the end of the marketing year for grains, they picked up a bit over the last couple of weeks. Wheat, soybeans, and corn both saw notable jumps in their figures, mainly due to Japan picking back up after a GMO scare in the Northwest earlier this year. The markets, meanwhile, have jumped all over the place, starting with big gains at the early part of the week, where corn went above $5, only to plunge back down on weather fears. Folks had been talking about an early freeze due to a cooler August, but as hot, dry weather moved in, that changed. Now the focus is on possible drought damage, even if it's not as widespread as last year. Greg Fox, a grain marketing specialist with Farm Bureau Marketing, says there are ups and downs, and they're really about weather premiums moving in and out of the grains.
With the hot, dry weather, it's taken its toll on the crop. The Pro Farmer Tour showed a smaller pod count than what they've seen in the past. And then the weather has changed a little bit to where it's going to be a little cooler. So when you see cooler weather and potentially some rain, we're seeing the market tail down because they think it's going to help the crop. But every time we see the heat and the dryness jump back into these weather forecasts, it's going to give support back to these markets, because the last report that came out August 12th showed a little bit tighter bean stocks than what they were looking at before that report came out.
The bottom line is the freeze fears were immature, as there's no correlation between a cooler August and early freezes. A cooler September, though, Mike, often foretells an early freeze, so one way or the other, we'll have to keep an eye on the weather.
And I can tell you the one thing we're all hoping for here in Louisiana right now, Neil, is a cooler September. Neil Melancon, thanks. And remember, you can listen to any of Neil's daily radio reports on the Louisiana Farm Bureau Agri-News Radio Network. For a list of stations where you can tune in or listen online, click on over to our website, twilatv.org, and look for the LF Barn link on the home page. That does it for this edition of This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. Be sure to join us next week when we continue our series, TWILA Reporting for Duty. Avery Davidson spends a day at a goat dairy, and it is a story you are going to have to see to believe. Our series, TWILA Reporting for Duty, continues next week. Until then, you can watch any of our stories online at our website, twilatv.org. For all of us here at This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, I'm Michael Dana. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hope to see you again right here next week.